Kingdom Two Crowns is a weird game. Released just 2 years after its predecessor, Kingdom New Lands, you'd imagine the game has done a lot to improve on the formula, but honestly, not really. Unless you're a massive fan of the series, or have the wiki open on your other monitor, you'd probably be hard pressed to find the differences while playing through these games. Besides the obvious additions, like some new mounts, there isn't a lot of additional content outside of the DLCs, which I won't be discussing in this video. So how does the game sell itself? The promotional art, the trailers, even the title, they all point towards one new specific feature: multiplayer. Now I'm all for a good multiplayer mode. I've got friends, they play games, not always good ones, but every now and then we get to play a game that's actually meant to be fun. But is Two Crowns one of those games? I don't know, honestly. I'm kind of conflicted. On one hand, I don't think the multiplayer lives up to its own fanfare. There's just not enough meat on the bone to justify the attention put onto this feature. As someone who's been a casual player of the series since the first Kingdom, it's kind of a disappointment, quite honestly. But on the other hand, I still enjoyed my time playing through this game with a friend for a few hours for the purpose of this video. So am I stupid, or is there something more to this game and its multiplayer? Let's take a look into my dark, twisted mind, and you can decide for yourself. But before we get too deep into it, let's brush up on our Kingdom gameplay for those unfamiliar or forgetful, just so everything makes a bit more sense when we get into the actual multiplayer discussion. Kingdom is kind of a weird blend between a tower defense game and a city builder. You play as a king or queen, put on an island with nothing but a crown and a steed. The goal is to build up your kingdom while surviving nightly raids against these weird little guys called the Greed. Eventually you'll be able to develop the entire island and set sail off to a new one to start over again. But you are a monarch, and working is for peasants, so you don't have to do any of the actual building. What you do is go around throwing money at people and objects and then watch while your empire builds itself. You use coins to hire citizens from camps, to make tools or weapons for your workers, and to upgrade walls or buildings. This is why I say it's a weird blend. It has the feeling of a city builder, watching your numbers and borders grow and seeing your buildings develop over time. It gives you a sense of progression. Sometimes it's fun to just follow one of your little guys around for a little bit, just to watch his hunting routine play out. At the same time though, the resource management is pretty linear, essentially just managing between economy and military. Making sure you have good enough walls and weapons to make it through the night, while greeding out as much as you can for farmers and such to increase your income down the line. The Greed take the emphasis away from the city building aspects of the game by showing up every night, reminding you that ultimately your goal is survival. You can fight back though. Eventually you can lead small hit squads to destroy the portals they come through, making the island a safer place. But it's kind of a race against time. See, the Greed gets stronger every night. First they'll start wearing helmets, but pretty soon they'll get bigger and even start flying, and then the big ones will be wearing helmets too. Every 5th night will be a blood moon type event, and the raid will be especially intense. If they manage to break down your walls, they'll start taking your tools, your money, your pride, and most importantly, your crown. If you lose that, it's game over. So you really need to go out and demolish those portals before stolen resources snowball into a stolen crown. So on paper, the game actually sounds super intense. You've got resources to manage, borders to defend, and those Oblivion Hour portals to close. But in practice, Kingdom really has all the intensity of an idle mobile game. But don't get it twisted. The friction is compelling, the time and resource management is engaging, but the simplicity of this game kind of holds back any unique expression of gameplay. This is Kingdom's most interesting quirk to me. I promise this is still important for talking about the multiplayer. So what do I mean by the simplicity of gameplay? Well, if you haven't noticed, Kingdom is kind of one-dimensional. And not in like an insulting way, I mean it's literally one-dimensional. There's only one plane of existence in this game, only one axis to interact with and move around on. The pretty graphics tell your brain otherwise, but from a functionality perspective, Kingdom's game world takes place on a straight horizontal line. No up or down, only left and right. But that's not all. You also really only have one way to interact with the environment. Trees, buildings, people. All you can do is throw a predetermined amount of money at them, and in return get a predetermined result. Even the resource management is pretty basic once you break it down. There are multiple types of resources: coins, gems, citizens, different types of tools or workers, but coins control all of these things. Maximizing coins and using them well is the only thing you have to worry about really. Sure, once you find gems you might have to make some tough decisions on how to use them, but otherwise, coins are essentially the only resource that actually matters. When you put all this together, it makes for a very simple system. There's only one way to expand and two directions to expand in. And when you do decide to expand, your buildings are pre-placed and their upgrades are linear in cost and utility. Kingdom's strategy is really about opportunity cost. What to spend coins on now and what to spend coins on later. It's more about when you do stuff, because the hows have already been set out for you. That's all to say that the moment-to-moment gameplay is actually pretty mild. There just isn't too much to worry about. You expand one border at a time, make sure you have enough archers and farmers, and keep a steady supply of citizens coming in and you're good. You actually end up having a lot of downtime in the process. Things take time in this game. Traveling across the map, waiting for stuff to build, for night and day to pass. Genuinely, sometimes the most optimal thing to do is to sit and wait. It's not an APM sweatfest or an unsolvable puzzle. It's kind of just a stop and smell the roses type of experience. And the game delivers hard on this idea. The ambience, the sound design, the visuals, they all come together in a beautiful way. It's got just enough of a soothing, nonchalant air to it that balances out all those satisfying pings and twangs fighting for your attention. The music is what really makes this game great though. I cannot glaze the soundtrack enough. I honestly think it's super underrated. The game uses its tracks in a very cool way, having them fade in and out seemingly at random. You get these stretches of quiet ambience that make it feel special when a track starts to play. It makes whatever you're doing feel important and memorable, regardless of how mundane it might be. Okay, let's finally talk about the multiplayer. Kingdom 2 Crowns is a 2-player co-op game. Not 3 or 4 players, just 2 and no more. Now when you think of 2-player co-op games, you might think of It Takes Two, Unravel 2, Portal 2, Lego Batman 2, We Were Here, Together. Now there's an obvious pattern here. These are all very intimate experiences. You've got to work together, to rely on one another. To enjoy these games, you have to forfeit your agency and let your friend take over every now and then. They might have access to information you need, have a special ability that is required for the situation, or maybe they can just empower you in some way to get something done. This kind of game design philosophy just makes sense for a cooperative experience in general, but especially so when you're going to be interacting with just one other person, which is why it's so strange that 2 Crowns doesn't seem to adhere to this idea at all. The problem with 2 Crowns as co-op is that it basically doesn't exist. Sure, 2 people can exist in the same game world, And to be fair, that is kind of awesome by itself. But the big issue here is that there is just no way to directly interact with one another. There are no new mechanics here, nothing added to support the multiplayer. It makes you think, what was the point? Why a whole new game just for this? All that fanfare for what feels like a crude mod. The one thing you can kind of do with each other is share coins, but even that doesn't feel intentional since it's basically just throwing money on the floor and asking your buddy to pick it up. But otherwise there really is nothing you can do with each other. You may as well be a ghost in the other player's world. Now there is a novelty to just building up a kingdom with a friend. Like I said, it's kind of awesome in its own right. You go exploring out into the forest for a day and come back and see a new wall put up and some fresh citizens walking around. It's just kind of cool to see progress taking place outside of just your own efforts. It creates a strong feeling of cooperation even when you aren't working together consciously. But because these systems are so simplistic, there aren't really a lot of decisions to be made. This makes the co-op pretty mindless. You don't have to decide on much together or really even think too much about strategy at all. If you both understand the basics of the game, it becomes situationally obvious what you should be doing at any given time. You'll barely see each other since there's no real reason to even stick around one another, and it just makes sense to split up to cover more ground. You're both working on the same kingdom, but it's almost like you end up building it parallel to each other. Like you're not working together, you're just building a kingdom too. Crowns.
Say that again?
By all rights and metrics, that all sounds pretty bad. But what if I told you it's also kind of what makes this game special? For all its idle gameplay and lack of cooperative systems, Two Crowns manages to strike at an experience that is actually kind of novel. See, when you play a really good co-op game that forces you to rely on, collaborate, and strategize with other players, it can actually end up being a lot of work.
Need to hold someone's hand, little pup.
A good example of this is Overcooked. When you play this game with friends, especially larger lobbies, you need to be constantly communicating what needs doing, what you're doing, and where you need to be. The game gives you the most insane kitchen plan layout, with moving platforms and sporadically locking off spaces. Then it gives you an order list and a timer, and the chaos unfolds by itself. The different orders keep operations from being homogeneous. The changing kitchen forces each player to be adaptable and not fall back on just one role. Every moment of Overcooked is stressful and chaotic, and the chaos can only be quelled by good teamwork and communication. It's a brilliant game. It feels very intentional in its design, and the execution is super creative. But I find myself mentally exhausted after a session. You might have some cool moments and a good laugh, but once it's over you realize you didn't get to do much socializing. There's too much going on in this game to just be hanging out. It feels awesome to improve your scores and become better as a team, but that level of engagement comes at a cost. Two Crowns is basically the opposite side of this scale. Remember when I was waffling on about stopping and smelling the roses? For all its flaws, the game still inherits a lot of positive aspects of its core gameplay into its co-op experience. As I've stated and restated, the game is fundamentally chill. Those simpler systems leave a lot of cognitive real estate for thoughts and conversation. The periods of waiting and downtime give you time to actually talk about stuff. You'll rarely be interrupted by something important or immediate happening. It's mindless busy work while you chat. The pretty visuals and basic gameplay keep you occupied, and that beautiful soundtrack fills the silence between. It's a pretty good game to play idly while you catch up with a friend. When I was talking about two-player games, I said that they are intimate because they force players to interact with and rely on one another. But Two Crowns somehow ends up being just as intimate in spite of not having those features at all. Not in the way the game is played, but in the way you play the game. Nothing about this game necessarily encourages socializing, but it does facilitate it very well. The word cozy gets thrown around a lot in the gaming space nowadays, but I think a game like Two Crowns really represents what that kind of experience is supposed to be like, at least for me. No endless checklist of chores to be done each day, no NPCs to min-max a relationship with, and no shoehorned RPG light mechanics. It's just that idle game-like feeling that facilitates a chill environment. There are some exciting moments here and there when you get a new mount, or set sail for a new island, but there is no constant pressure to perform. You aren't going to let your buddy down by not locking in and playing optimally. Even in the most dire situation, when your defenses aren't enough and your kingdom is being sacked, there's not much to be done besides watch it all unfold. It's not frustrating or nail-biting, it's inevitable. Winning was never the point, and you were always here just to hang out. Maybe I'm giving this game too much credit. Is it truly a case of genius, emergent game design, or did the developers just not think to add anything to that bare bones co-op? The problem with negative design is it's hard to tell what is and isn't intentionally not included. Maybe I'm just glazing the game for just being kind of lazy with its multiplayer implementation. And to be fair, I still wish it had done more with it. A tiny bit more interactivity definitely would not have hurt. Two Crowns still disappointed me, but it surprised me too. It got me thinking about what makes a good co-op game, and the reasons we play games with our friends. Ultimately, intentional or not, the game is what it is, and sometimes all you can do is try to appreciate something where you can. I know this is probably a topic no one asked for, but I thought it was an interesting case study, since Two Crowns has always been a relatively popular co-op game, and I've always wondered why. I wanted to use this as an opportunity to try get into video making, and see what that process is like. So if you enjoyed, leave a like, maybe subscribe. I'll hopefully be working on more videos to come, discussing some less talked about ideas in video games and maybe even some other media too. Thanks for watching.